All right, now the bacterial stains, we're just going to look at a couple of the stains, the gram stain being the most important. We'll follow that up with the acid-fast stain and then a screening stain that we call the oramine-rhodamine stain. For the gram stain, you do not have to know every single step in the gram stain, okay? Certainly though, what's important to know is that the gram-positive organisms will stain purple, okay? If you look down here, the gram-positive organisms stain purple, and the gram-negative organisms, as we talked about earlier, cannot retain that crystal violet in the peptidoglycan, so they counterstain with safranin. Therefore, the gram-negative organisms are pink, okay? Now, the reason you need to know the colors and not necessarily all of the different steps is that maybe they will say, you know, we did a gram stain of the sputum and we isolated purple cocci. So purple cocci means you have to know that that translates into the fact that it would be a gram-positive cocci. So a good idea to know the colors. In addition to that, you know they're going to be showing you images. The exam being computer-based as it is, they're going to show you an image. They're going to say, hey, you know what, we did a gram stain of the sputum, here it is. And then you'll have to look at that and determine whether it's gram-positive or gram-negative. All right, so in that regard, it's really important that you know the color difference. Okay, same deal for the acid-fast stain. Now, what I like to tell students about the acid-fast stain is when we talk microbiology, we are really talking this huge subject, all right, that when you get a question, you basically have to take all of this information and pare it down into something that's logical for the question that they're asking, all right? Now, the acid-fast stain, you know, gram stain's kind of your first here, but man, if they tell you something's acid-fast, that takes like this much stuff and whoosh, whittles it down to this, all right? There aren't that many clinically infectious pathogens that are acid-fast, all right? So, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the stain, and then I'm going to tell you it's really important to know the agents that are acid-fast, all right? Now, the acid-fast stain goes for organisms that have mycolic acid, like tuberculosis, for example, in the composition of their cell wall, okay? Makes it a little bit harder to stain, so they use an acid-fast stain to actually get the color into the membrane. And again, what you need to know, not necessarily is how to do one, what are all the steps, you need to know what the colors mean. So if I tell you, you know, you had somebody coming in, you had a patient coming in that was coughing up blood-tinged sputum, they had a fever, weight loss, night sweats. We did an acid-fast stain of the sputum and we saw pink rods. What does that mean? So instead of just coming out and say, you know what, we found acid-fast rods, they might tell you they found pink rods. And you'll have to know that means that's acid-fast positive, all right? Now, anything that's not acid-fast counterstains blue. So if they gave you that scenario and they said that they did a acid-fast stain of the sputum and we found blue rods, that means that it's not acid-fast. Okay, so again, the color is going to be important there. Okay, now the sputa, when we're talking about tuberculosis, we're going to look at one other stain that's helpful in the diagnosis for acid-fast organisms. And what you see here is something called an oramine-rhodamine stain. Now, acid-fast stain, because it takes some time to get the dyes to penetrate into the membrane, the acid-fast stain actually takes quite a bit of time. So what they can do to kind of speed things up is they do a screening stain called the oramine-rhodamine stain. This way they can process large amounts of sputum relatively quickly. Anything that's potentially acid-fast stains, as you can see here, bright fluorescent green or apple green. All right? So these would then be confirmed by an acid-fast stain. All right? Now, there are several other examples I can give you where you have a screening test and a confirmatory test. And for whatever reason, the boards love to ask you about this. They'll tell you somebody was diagnosed or is undergoing a panel for HIV diagnosis. They'll want to know what the screening test is for that. Or they might want to know what the confirmatory test is. So it's really important to understand the difference between the screen and then the confirmatory test. And so we're seeing an example of that here. I gave you another example with HIV, and actually the other really important example is with syphilis, where you do the non-specific treponema antibody test followed up by the confirmatory fluorescent antibody test. So that's when those screening versus confirmatory tests become really important.